Hi everybody, my name is Silverin, and today I'm going to talk to you about my guide for 9.1.5 Protection Paladin, primarily in Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus is something I love to do. It's what I focus on. Raiding, I did raid in 9.0. 9.1 I haven't had the time to raid, so I don't have a lot of the good raid gear. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but this will primarily be a Mythic Plus focus guide for the 15 to 20 key range. Obviously, it could be applicable to keys higher than that, but I haven't pushed that high this season, so I don't want to provide any. There's probably a lot of knowledge out there. I know right now the number one Mythic Plus tank is a Protection Paladin, played by Andy Brew. I think he's like 3,000 IO. So if you're looking for really high level play, you could go to his Twitch stream and check out some of that. But this is for people looking to get into Tank Paladin, just have fun in Mythic Plus, and I think Protection Paladin is a great class for that. And we'll get into that now. So changes for Protection Paladin in 9.1.5, there wasn't any really. Now, Ret Paladin did have some changes. Their AoE is now uncapped on Divine Storm. So if you like playing tank and melee DPS, could be a good class to do both of those. And also Holy Paladin, if you like to play all three specs, as far as a healer goes too, is always wanted in keys for their DPS cooldowns and good healing. So overall, Protection Paladin in Mythic Plus is, in my opinion, a great tank. It is an amazing pug tank, and we'll get into that a little bit later. First and foremost, the strengths, you have amazing damage. You have huge AoE abilities, especially on Mythic Plus fortified weeks. You can pump out some big numbers, basically being a fourth DPS essentially. And it could really help your team time keys, especially when you're really close and you get on higher keys and you really need to push the damage. I think Protection Paladins are also great. We have a very simple rotation. Normally, after you go in, you use your initial rotation on a mob. You're basically going to be at the point where there's only going to be one or two of your abilities up at a time due to cooldowns. So that allows you to kind of just automatically press them in your head, and when the abilities come up, and lets you focus more on positioning, was extremely important. And in positioning and keeping an eye out for your team, keep an eye out for your DPS, making call outs and general like area knowledge, instead of a super complicated rotation in which you'd really have to concentrate on that. So another big benefit of Protection Paladins is we have extremely easy threat generation. We have three AoE abilities four actually AoE abilities that will grab threat instantly, keep threat, huge damage numbers, and the number one thing a tank needs to do in all dungeons is you need to get the threat from the mobs. You need to keep that threat so they don't attack your DPS, and your DPS can do their job of killing the mobs as fast as they can. So being able to generate threat quick and really not having an issue with your fighting your DPS on threat generation is awesome. It makes tanking a lot easier, and when you're not fighting with your DPS, especially in pugs, which can be an issue. So the fourth thing I think that's really great about Paladins is we have some pretty good defensive cooldowns, but we have lots of interrupts between Avenger Shield, our Rebuke, Divine Toll if you go the Kyrian Covenant. It's amazing how many mobs you can interrupt. You have an AoE interrupt, you have an interrupt on 14 seconds, you have an interrupt on 15 seconds. You have a stun with your talented end. You could be on 30 seconds. You can talent into an AoE stun. It's just a lot of good options for interrupting, and that's especially important in a pug environment when sometimes you can't count on, if you don't know the people you're running with, them to interrupt the high priority interrupts. Example, in Spires, there might be a pull where you have two Goliaths and their Rebellious Fist. If one of those goes off, it's pretty much over in a high key for your team. If two of them goes off, it's definitely lights out for everybody. So being able to interrupt them, and plus in Shadowlands in a lot of these dungeons, there's a lot of spells that don't target the tank. They target random party members, and the fact that you can interrupt them and prevent your party members from taking extra damage is just icing on the cake. It's going to help your healer, it's going to help you, and it's going to help you time the keys better. So, and then one of the last great strengths about Protection Paladin is their general utility. We have Blessing of Freedom, which can remove party members from roots and snares. We have Blessing of Sacrifice, which will transfer some of their damage to you. We have Divine Protection, Blessing of Protection, which will shield a party member from all physical damage. So there's a lot of options, and those are the ones when you feel more comfortable with your basic rotation and tanking. Utilizing the Paladin's utility and off healing is something that will set aside like an average Paladin to a really good Mythic Plus Paladin who can help make up for deficiencies of DPS or healers, or just add to the group. If you have an amazing group, just add more utility to the group to help you time keys. And a lot of people think timing keys is all about the DPS, and that's extremely important. But Paladins excel at keeping their party alive, which is great in pug groups in which you never know the skill, like the general IO or the rating of which you're bringing into the group, but you never really know their skill level and if they're going to utilize their defensives and their utility as far as the class goes. So saying that, with the strengths, there are some weaknesses to Protection Paladin. I'd say the number one glaring weakness is they don't have any displacement abilities, which is extremely unfortunate. And just being able to move a mob from one place to another, it's really great on Sanguine weeks. So we have to really use our interrupts, utilize our interrupts, and utilize line of sight, and that helps us out a lot. So, little different strategy of tanking and some of the other tanks. Another downside is we are slow, very slow. And you can really see it in this one dungeon called The Other Side, where there's a lot of mounted running around the dungeon. We're normally in last place all the time, and it can take some time off a key, 30 seconds here, a minute there. We're not bad at kiting due to our consecration slow that we can talent into, but overall we're pretty slow. But if you're looking for a tank that can I would say excel in a pug environment, or just with a group of friends up to level 20 or beyond, I think Protection Paladin is an excellent option. Just a quick caveat, because of the simple rotation, I think Guardian Druid is also another really great option. I think they're very comparable, and Guardian Druid has a lot more defensives to protect themselves, whereas Paladin sacrifices some of those defensives to protect your party. So looking ahead at Mythic Plus, we'll talk about some of the talents that I would recommend. All right, so going into Mythic Plus, we'll go row by row for the talents. I think on your first row at level 15 talents, you have Holy Shield, which increases your block chance by 15% and allows you to block spells, which is awesome, because there are some dungeons where you just can't interrupt every spell. The Other Side is one of them. They're packs with the Death Speaker, and they're casting massive spells. So if you get hit by that spell and you get that block chance and you can block it, reduces the damage by 30-40%. That is awesome. So another readout is it will increase your strength and stamina as the fight goes on. I think it's used in Raid a lot. I don't highly recommend it for Mythic Plus. The other one and I think is very competitive with Mythic Plus, is Blessed Hammer. And the nice thing about this is you get 3 charges of it. So Blessed Hammer would replace your Hammer of the Righteous, and which is your one of your AoE abilities. Hammer of the Righteous does physical damage. Blessed Hammer does holy damage. It's going to give you a little damage reduction, and it comes with 3 charges instead of only 2 charges with Hammer of the Righteous, which will allow you to generate more holy power, and more holy power means more healing and more Shield of the Righteous, and it's a great way to fill in your rotation if you feel like your rotation's a little slow and you feel like you're already tanky enough and you don't need Holy Shield. So I think Holy Shield or Blessed Hammer are both viable options for Mythic Plus, depending on how you like to play. And the nice thing about Blessed Hammer is if you just start out in Mythic Plus and you have low haste on your Paladin, having an extra charge of Blessed Hammer can help fill that rotation and really smooth it out, so you always have a holy power to spend on either healing yourself or um, generating a Shield of the Righteous. So in the next line, first Avenger. So Avenger Shield hits 2 additional targets and grants you an Absorb Shield for 100% of all the damage it deals. Amazing, especially if you're carrying and you're going Divine Toll, which we'll get into Covenants in a little bit. But it generates threat on 2 additional targets plus damage, plus you're getting a shield for now all the 5 target damage that you hit. And your Avenger Shield is on a 14-second cooldown or 13-second. It is affected by haste. Plus, it can reset instantly on a Hammer of the Righteous. I think there's a 15% chance or something. We'll get into that. It's one of your passives. So, highly recommend this first Avenger. Another good option, Crusader's Judgment. You have 2 charges of Judgment. Can help fill your holy rotation if you're in some dungeons where you're not doing like big pulls, like I don't know. Sometime in like Theater of Pain, you fight a lot of 1 mobs, 2 mobs together. But overall, I think First Avenger is the best pick in Mythic Plus, and it's gonna give you holy power, shields, and damage, threat. It's just all packaged into one nice thing, and especially with some of the legendaries we take, it's just the way to go. So the third row is more of a utility row. So Fist of Justice is our stun. So all those spells, it will interrupt spell casting, and then there's a lot of spells that cannot be interrupted that you have to hard CC. So this reduces the cooldown on Fist of Justice by 2 seconds when you spend Holy Power. And so basically right now the normal cooldown is 60 seconds. Essentially, when you're running through a dungeon, this will take it down to about 30 seconds, which is awesome. Having a stun on a 30 seconds cooldown, big plus, especially in Plaguefall to hit some Stormers, and moving on from there. But highly recommend Fist of Justice. Repentance is basically you can CC humanoids, demons, undead, Dragon King, giants. It will, however, when it's done, it will keep you in combat, so you can't use it to skip. But this is very good, though, for pugs, especially in Inspiring Weeks, when you're running with people that you don't know, and you can't expect them to know what you want to CC. You can always ask, but they might mess it up. So you can use this to CC the Inspiring mobs, do your pull, and then bring the finish the Inspiring mob off after. So Inspiring Weeks, this is a possibility if you're doing a lot of pugs. Other than that, I recommend Fist of Justice. Blinding Light is an AoE essentially interrupt. We use it as an AoE interrupt, which is awesome in certain dungeons. The other side, for instance, in the Hakar Wing, there's a lot of. It basically gives you another stun, another way to interrupt non-interruptible spells, spells that have to be interrupted with a stun. So if you take this, you have an AoE Fist of Justice, like mini. It doesn't have the stun, but it'll interrupt them. So it's a great option. I think it's it's definitely recommended. I think definitely try Blinding Light and Fist of Justice out and see how you feel with those. You'll definitely find in dungeons that Blinding Light sometime is going to be a priority. So Unbreakable Spirit on the fourth row. You got a couple options. Unbreakable Spirit reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, which is your complete immunity. Ardent Defender, which is your number 1 defensive cooldown. And Lay on Hands, which is your massive heal. You can use it on yourself. You can use it on party members, which it's a 10-minute cooldown. It's a huge heal. It's a lifesaver. Brings it down to 7 minutes, which is good in Mythic Plus. You can get some more of those off. So this is a very defensive talent. Cavalier gets you an extra charge of Divine Steed. Right now, your Divine Steed boosts your move speed by 100% for a couple seconds. You get 2 of those. It's a 40-second cooldown. So it is nice to have 2 of those, make you move around the dungeon a little more. I prefer the more defensive option. Movement is very important, but it's not as important as bringing your, in my opinion, your Ardent Defender shield down. So, Blessing of Spell Warding, if you can utilize it, and a lot of what I would say high level pallies utilize this really well in dungeons, can be huge. It can protect you from all magic damage for 10 seconds, and you can still hold a threat if they're hitting you with physical damage and stuff. So I'm not too I haven't experimented with it that much. I've only been playing Protection Paladin since the beginning of Shadowlands, but I've seen pallies in higher keys that have used it to effect, and even in MDI they've used Blessing of Spell Warding to great effect. So in the 5th row, Divine Purpose. If you spend Holy Power, you get a chance to make your next Holy Power ability free, and it can either do more damage or increased healing. It's just a passive. It's always good. I'm not a big fan of random procs, but compared to the other talents in the tree, I think it's the best option and will give you the most benefit over the length of a Mythic Plus dungeon. 30 or 40 minutes. Holy Avenger, for 20 seconds, you generate just a ton more Holy Power. Could be used as a good defensive cooldown. I think over the life of the dungeon, pulling mob after mob after mob, Divine Purpose is going to be your be a little more beneficial to you. And Seraphim, it's a very powerful DPS or defensive cooldown, increasing your haste, critical strike, verse, mastery. You pop this with Venging Wrath, which is you people call your wings, which is already increasing those 20%. Get an extra 8% here for 15 seconds, and it increases your bursts by a ton, while also making you a lot more tanky because you're getting more haste. You can put on more Shield of Righteous or more heals. So on tyrannical weeks, I think this is a good option on some of the bosses that are really hard to take down, considering the first boss to miss in Grimalik, where you need to just burst the crap out of him in a small 20-second window. Could be a really good option. I think overall Divine Purpose, over the course of the dungeon, giving you either more Shield of Righteous, which is more damage, and more armor, or more Word of Glories, which is more healing for you, is going to be a little better in the end. But again, I think those are both viable options to work into the rotation. So the 5th row, or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th row, is my favorite two. Hand of the Protector. So Word of Glory. So that is down here. So basically, you can heal a friendly target, or you can heal yourself. And every 4 Shield of the Righteous, you get a free word. Every 5 Shield of the Righteous, you get a free Word of Glory. That is Shining Light. Every 5 Shield of Righteous, your next Word of Glory is free. And so that is the primary way you're going to use Word of Glory. You want that free one because you want to use Shield of Righteous for damage and the extra armor. And now put a little asterisk on that. At high level Paladin play, a lot of the high level Paladins primarily use Word of Glory and skip Shield of the Righteous because the heals are just great and you can heal your teammates. But it's a little different way to play. I don't do that. I don't find it as fun. You don't do as much damage. So, but this will increase Word of Glory's healing. I think it's the best option some weeks. The other and probably recommended option for Mythic Plus is Consecrated Grounds. It makes your consecration larger, and it provides a 50% movement speed slow against mobs, which is awesome. So Necrotic Week, when you need to kite, if you're in halls and a Loyal Beast cast goes off and you need to get out of there, you put this down, mobs can't reach you. Highly recommend. Now, if you're tanky enough and you can just stay in one place, Hand of the Protector is the way to go. It's just going to heal you more. Heal's not incredibly better, but if you're not utilizing the slow, then you might as well get some extra healing. So, for weeks where I feel like I'm tanky enough, especially like tyrannical weeks, Hand of the Protector. Fortified weeks, if I feel like I need to kite a little more, Consecrated Ground. All right, so the last row, so you got a couple options here. Sanctified Wrath. Avenging Wrath lasts 25% longer and causes Judgment to generate 1 additional Holy Power. It's pretty good. It's going to... your Avenging Wrath currently is on a 2-minute cooldown. and you get it for 25 seconds. So it's going to give you some more time. If you were playing on like a really big pull, could be good with more holy power. You get more heals, more armor. However, the recommended talent would be Righteous Protector, which is basically every holy power you spend will reduce the cooldown of your Avenging Wrath, which is your wings, and your Guardian of Ancient Kings, which is your 50% damage reduction for 8 seconds, which is currently on a 5-minute cooldown. The fact that you always are spending holy power will essentially bring Avenging Wrath from a 2-minute cooldown down to a 1-minute cooldown, and will bring your Ancient Kings from a 5-minute cooldown to maybe like a 2.5-minute cooldown. So it gives you offensive and a defensive bonus essentially, and I highly recommend this because then you can have Avenging Wrath up for essentially every pull in a Mythic Plus dungeon, which it feels amazing as far as healing and damage. And that will be timed with your Divine Toll on every pack. So you'll have Avenging Wrath with Divine Toll. You'll be able to grab Threat. You'll be able to do a ton of damage. Interrupts. It just feels amazing to hit those abilities. And we'll talk about that in the rotation section in a little bit. And the last talent I want to talk about is Final Stand. So basically when you Divine Shield, you're going to lose. You're immune to damage. Grants immunity to all damage for 8 seconds. So essentially, you're going to lose all threat on mobs if you Divine Shield or you Blessing and Protection, which prevents you from taking any physical damage yourself. So this, when you Divine Shield, it will taunt all the targets near you, so you can be immune for 8 seconds and taunt them. And with your Unbreakable Spirit talent, your Divine Shield's down to a 3.5-minute cooldown, and you can conduit into something to bring it to a 3-minute cooldown. I think during necrotic weeks, there's a strong argument for taking Final Stand. It will clear your stacks. It will allow you to heal. It'll keep you immune for 8 seconds. You don't have to run. You can heal up. So it could be a really good option. I think between Righteous Protector and Final Stand, if you can play with a consistent group, I think that Righteous Protector is the way to go. You're just going to output more damage and make life easier every pull. But if you find yourself in a dungeon and you have a lot of trouble with just a couple pulls, or there's just a dungeon that gives you a lot of trouble when you try, there's a couple pulls that give you a lot of trouble, Final Stand could be a great option to go. So for this week, we have Fortified, Raging, and Explosive. I'll probably be going with this setup right here. Basically give me wings for every pack. I'm going to have Divine Toll for every pack. All my shields are going to hit 5 mobs, and we're going to be pulling big because it's we're going to be pulling big just because Raging, Explosive, I think they're pretty good mechanics, and we'll get into Mythics and fixes in a different video. But this is the basic setup that I'll run, and then I will tech into Blinding Light if I feel like I need an AoE interrupt, and I will tech into Consecrated Ground if I feel like I need that slow, so I can kite the mobs. So, cool. Alright, so we're talented for the week, and then we're going to go into what legendary we want to run as Protection Paladin. So, it's kind of ironic, but Protection Paladins have amazing DPS, and our best legendaries just let us have more DPS. So if you are not Kyrian, the legendary I would recommend is the Bulwark of Righteous Fury. Its stat is Avenger Shield. Every time you cast Avenger Shield, it increases the damage of your next Shield of Righteous by 30% for each target hit. So if you're talented into that Avenger Shield talent, that will hit 5 targets, you're going to get a 150% increase. And it increases its radius, so it's going to make sure it hits more mobs if you're like kiting back or whatever. So just purely damage right there, and just adding to an already offensive kit that the Protection Paladin has. If you're Kyrian, I like to go the Divine Resonance legendary, which is after you cast Divine Toll, you get a free Avenger Shield every 5 seconds for 15 seconds. So you get 3 free Avenger Shields what this does is it provides a little DPS. It provides holy power. It's going to generate 3 more holy power for you, and it's going to give you a tiny little shield if you're spec'd into First Avenger, because any damage it deals is going to give you 100% of shield. So this is a defensive and offensive legendary. Bulwark is purely offensive if you're going for the most damage you can in a Mythic Plus dungeon. If you're Kyrian, I recommend Divine Resonance. If you're not Kyrian, Bulwark or Righteous Fury are the 2 primary legendaries. 2 secondary legendaries I think could be an option. And again, this is Mythic Plus, we're not talking about Raid, would be Holy Avengers Engraved Sigil. It has a chance to reset your Avenger Shield, a 35% chance to reset it, so you can just get Avenger Shield after Avenger Shield after Avenger Shield. I think it's kind of a meme legendary. If you get the procs, it's amazing. If you don't get the procs, it's worth nothing, essentially. So. And then a defensive legendary, which I don't think is that good. I've tried it out a little bit, and if they allow us in the future to maybe run 2 legendaries, I think this could have a place. But the Ardent Protector Sanctum, with Ardent Defender, if it saves you from death, so Ardent Defender is your main defensive. It's going to reduce the damage you take by 20. It's going to get extended every time you use Shield of the Righteous, because we're gonna use a conduit to put into that. And if you die while that's up, you get revived, or essentially it's a cheat death that brings you back to 20% health. So if you were wearing this legendary and you died, it would bring you back to 60% health, which is awesome. If you were really good at triggering the death, you could use it as defensive that way. Don't recommend it. And then if it expires, it will reduce and you didn't die, you get to reduce the cooldown by 40%, which... Ardent Defender is your primary defensive, essentially. It's already going to be up for every pack. 40%, it's 1.5 minute cooldown right now. Take off 30, 40 seconds. It could be advantageous if you're like chain pulling, but I think the offensive power of the Paladin is just so much fun to utilize, putting out the numbers, and I highly recommend Divine Resonance currently. So, all right. So now I'd like to get a little bit into what kind of gear we're looking for and how to itemize your stats for a Paladin. So, quick disclaimer here: in current 9.1.5 in the raid Sanctum of Domination, there's Domination gear. It comes with a socket, and you can in those sockets, you can put these domination shards, which are amazing. They increase your DPS. They can make you tankier. I don't raid. I don't have access to any of them. If you're looking at that, the best way to learn about domination gear, if you like to raid, you go on Wowhead or Icy Veins. You go to Protection Paladin Class Guide, and they will walk you through what gear to look for, what gems to socket, and where to build your legendaries, because so for instance, I have my legendary in my chest for maximum stats, but I believe you'd want it on a cloak or a ring, because you're going to get a domination gear slot in your chest. So so disclaimer, this is purely for Mythic Plus. I'm just getting Mythic Plus gear, and we're just going to focus on that as far as stats go. But domination gear is awesome, could be great at Mythic Plus. Just can't give you the details because I don't raid too much right now. So anyway, so gearing for a Protection Paladin, number one thing is eye level. If you get a piece of gear that's higher eye level, it's probably going to have more stamina, more strength, which are our primary stats, and that's going to contribute to more damage, more healing, more health, and it all around just make you a tankier Paladin. Going down from that, as far as eye level goes, your primary stat would be haste. So, and you can see here, I highly recommend haste to get around 20 or 22%. That way, when you're popping wings, it just feels really smooth. And haste is just going to increase the cooldown of abilities. So, like this is 5.2 seconds right now. I have some better haste gear in here that I would put on sometimes, get me like 22% haste, and it smooths your rotation out. You get more abilities and all that. So haste 20 to 22% if you can get it, but eye level is your priority. After that, the stats are pretty close between mastery, versatility, and critical strike. Mastery ekes out a little bit better because it's going to increase your chance to block. It's going to reduce your damage if you're in concentration and increase your attack power. Whereas versatility will just increase your damage and your decrease your damage taken. So you get a little bit more use out of mastery. So I would say haste, mastery, and then verse and crit are pretty equal. Crit's going to let you do more damage, and it's also going to, your heals are going to be a lot more effective. So and then as far as sockets, any sockets you get, I recommend you put haste in it up to 22%, and then after that put mastery gems in. As far as enchants go, your cloak, get the plus 30 stamina enchant. Your chest, get your plus 30 stamina primary stats enchant. The weapon, celestial guidance, the proc of that is every now and then it'll increase your main stat, which is strength for us, by 5%. Put strength on your bracers. The more strength, the better. In one of the sockets, you can put the plus 7 strength gem, which I recommend. The rings are enchanted with haste right now because I'm a little low on haste. And then that's the general of as far as enchants go. And then as far as ideal gear in Mythic Plus, the number one tank trinket that you're going to try and get is in the other side, and it's called the Blood Spattered Scale. Does a huge amount of damage, scales off the number of mobs near you up to 5, and gives you a huge shield, like 50,000. If you're looking at the screen, 50,000 shield just for pressing it. Sorry. And then if there were mobs around, it would be 50,000 times 5. So you would reach the shield cap essentially. One of the best Mythic Plus trinkets you can get if you're looking to get serious into tanking. It's essentially a 2-minute defensive cooldown for any tank in Mythic Plus, and I highly recommend you try and get it if you can. It's a drop from the other side, or you can get lucky and get it in your vault like I did. So that's the basics on the gear. Quick run through with consumables. You're going to want to, as far as flask spectral power is going to increase your strength by 70. You want more strength. You might see that flask of stamina and you think, oh, more health, but that more strength essentially gives us increases our attacks, increases our parry chance, increases the effectiveness of all of our abilities, so our heals, our armor on Shield of the Righteous. So that's going to affect a lot more than just getting straight up stamina. So use the Flask of Power. You want to use an Augment Rune, gives you another 18 strength for an hour. You want to use Heavy Desolate Armor Kit. It's going to increase your the stamina on your chest by 32. So it's good. As far as food goes, use the haste food, Crown Roast aspect. Increase your haste by 30 for the dungeon, and weapon, Shadow Core Oil. It's just gonna let you do a little extra damage. Paladins were already offensively minded, and we want to do a lot of damage, so let's just add to it and go out there and rock the dungeon with our AoE damage. So make it a lot of fun. So cool. All right, so next on the list is Covenants for Mythic Plus. Now, originally I started out with Venthyr because they have some amazing Covenant abilities and soul binds. Their main class ability is Ashen Hollow. It drops this huge AoE healing and damage boost for your team. It's on a 3-minute cooldown. Allows you to do some awesome crazy pulls. Great for tyrannical weeks on tough bosses where you need to pump out the damage. And overall, it's a lot of fun. And then you get a little teleport as far as your signature ability, which is cool. Can make you let you do some cool steps and everything. So, and I know a lot of raid paladins go Venthyr. However, I'm going to recommend that you go Kyrian, and there are a couple good reasons for that. So the first reason is this guy right here. our little summon steward. He's our signature ability. He can give you a mailbox. You can reset talents with him. He can play a friend a song, all that fun stuff. But the most important thing right here is File of Serenity. Restores health. Doesn't count as a potion, so you can use potions also. And it will remove diseases, poisons, curses, and bleed effects, which, bam, awesome. Helps your healer out, helps you out. There's Grievous Week. There's Necrotic Week on both Tyrannical and Fortified nowadays. So this will just remove all that, plus give you some health, get you back to normal. It's a very nice defensive, and it's great in a lot of the dungeons, especially Plaguefall. So, and moving on from there, the number one reason to take Kyrian as Paladin is for Divine Toll. Instantly cast Avenger's Shield on up to 5 targets within 30 yards. Amazing. So Avenger's Shield already hits 3 targets. You talent in on First Avenger, you're now hitting 5 targets, and now it casts at 5 times. So you have 5 targets around you, and it's going to cast that 5 times. Let's go have a little fun. So here's one Avenger Shield. You can see, yep, got a nice little shield, right? Here's Divine Toll. Woo! Oh my goodness, look at that damage. And it's just so satisfying to hit. And that right there, you saw, this is my Divine Resonance Legendary. We're going to get one every 5 seconds right up here. We'll get one last one right here. Okay, so that's gone. So anyway, we got a 24,000 shield now, basically because of Divine Toll in the first Avengers, which is so much fun. And if you spec into the talent that's going to reduce your wings essentially down to a minute cooldown as you spend Holy Power, you're essentially going to have Divine Toll every time you have wings up, which is just going to empower it even more. Gives you a lot of Holy Power to use, and it's an amazing ability with the interrupts, with the shields, and the DPS. Highly recommend it. Go for it. So you choose Kyrian, which I definitely recommend, and you're looking for what Soulbind. So once you grind your Renown out to 80, you can unlock everything essentially. And then you're looking at Soulbind. So Pelagos is when you hit Divine Toll, you get a lot of mastery, so it'll give you a lot of damage instantly. Good Soulbind. It has some good defensive abilities. Right here reduces your magic damage you take by 3%, so that's great. Kalea is great for Necrotic Weeks, basically because of Hope Springs Eternal. Your File of Serenity reduces damage taken by 20% for 8 seconds, and it grants it to your ally. And then Ascendant File will prevent you from gaining necrotic bleeds or poisons for 8 seconds. So between those two, on Necrotic Weeks or maybe even a Grievous Week, it could be a good option to use for a Soulbind. So, however, I recommend Mykonos. So basically, the big thing here, Bronn, after you use a bunch of abilities, which for us, we're always, well, everyone's always using abilities, but he comes out, he can do a knockback, which is great because we don't have knockback, so we can interrupt mobs that we couldn't interrupt, and he's going to heal you, he's going to attack your targets, do good damage. Go from there. So you could plan it when he comes up, but normally you're just using abilities and he comes up, and maybe you could slow it down if you're coming up on a boss or a big pack or something. But that'd be pretty tough. But the main reason we are using him is for this right here. When we use Effusive Anima Accelerator, when we use Divine Toll, which is our bread and butter ability, this in Shadowlands essentially. We do extra damage, arcane damage, and for every person we hit or every mob we hit with Divine Toll, we reduce the cooldown of Divine Toll by 4 seconds to a maximum of 20 seconds. So Mythic Plus is based around pulling big, next mob, next pull big, or when everyone has their cooldowns up, you pull big. Maybe do a little pull next, pull big, fight a boss. This is going to put your Divine Toll on a 40-second cooldown, which means that we get that huge AoE 5 Avenger shields, 5 interrupts, plus the shield every 40 seconds. And in addition to that, because we're running the Divine Resonance Legendary, we are getting an extra Avenger shield every 15 seconds. So we're getting a Divine Toll every 40 seconds, plus 3 free Avenger shields every 40 seconds. That's just awesome. So Paladins, Kyrian Paladins, you're really planning your pulls around this Legendary and around this Soulbind, which is just so much fun. And there's some, you can do some different paths in here to play around with, but I highly recommend this Soulbind, Forge Light Prime, and mainly for this ability right here. So then talking about conduits, and conduits are what we put into our soul binds that make our ability stronger. The number one potency conduit. So potency, you can kind of think of like offensive conduits. Endurance, you're thinking defensive, and finesse, you're thinking helping you move around, utility conduits. I highly recommend Ringing Clarity. It gives your Divine Toll a very high chance to cast 3 more times on the main target. So now we hit a pack, and we have a 76% chance, and this will vary by the item level of the conduit, to hit your primary target another 3 times. It's bonkers. 3 more Avenger Shields. It's so much fun. Just do a Kyrian Paladin, hit the button, and just go to town. It's a lot of fun. Go for it. Then we get into Forge Light Filler. So basically this will automatically use your Phial of Serenity. It's not great. I like to use Final Serenity when I want to use Final Serenity, but I use this for the potency slot, essentially. So that's where we go from there. The number one endurance or finesse conduit that you want is Light's Barding. Increases the duration of Divine Steed. And we're already super slow, so this basically doubles the duration. So you want to go that route. This doesn't really matter. You can durability on armor or present some fall damage. It's not really going to make an effect on a Mythic dungeon. Shielding words. We're casting Word of Glory a lot. This is when you cast Word of Glory, you also get a little shield. Very good conduit to put in. Recommend it. And on this right here, you could go left and get another potency conduit, and potentially get you 3 potency conduits with this soul bind. But I like to get another endurance conduit, and this is your number one endurance conduit. Shield of the Righteous, Resolute Defender. Shield of the Righteous extends Ardent Defender's duration by 20%, but more importantly, it reduces its cooldown by 1.9 seconds, which this is your bread and butter defensive Ardent Defender, the one that's going to be up the most and you're using all the time, and reducing its cooldown is just really good for our defensive capabilities as a Paladin. Hammer of Genesis, we're going to get more haste, which is awesome, especially for me, and my haste is very low right now, so I have great eye level gear, but none of it is really optimized, unfortunately, so I'm still trying to get some best in slots for my Paladin. And then Vengeful Shock is the second potency conduit we want to run. Anything that gets hit by your Avenger Shield will take an extra 5.7% holy damage for 5 seconds, and because Divine Toll is throwing Avenger Shields out every 5 seconds with our Legendary afterwards, and our Avenger Shield is on a 13-second cooldown with the possibility to reset. This buff is almost always up, and the majority of our damage is holy damage. So it's just basically giving us a 5.7% damage increase on all mobs, which I'll reiterate again. Protection Paladins we play offensive, and it's fun. It's so much fun. So throw that in there. You're just going to do more damage. And here, if you want another endurance conduit, you can go left, and it's going to do, you get to do another 3% damage to targets, or you can come right for a little more shielding. I recommend the shielding, and then you can Echo's Blessings, improves your Blessing of Freedom, which we'll go through in a little bit. It's just a minor benefit. It's not a big deal. On some dungeons, Wrench Evil, so you have an ability, Turn Evil, which essentially you can use on aberrations and undead. It will make them run away. Wrench Evil, you could fit in here that would replace it would reduce the cast time of Turn Evil, which is currently 1.3 seconds. You put that in, it's like 0.5 seconds. Could be very used if you pug. It's very good, well utilized on Plaguefall, on the first boss. There's a big slime that you don't want to DPS because it wastes DPS, but you need to keep it away. You can use Turn Evil on that, and it's not a 1.3 second cast, so it's easier to tank. And this range is increased. So, but Echo Blessings is the recommended second finesse. It's going to help protect your party members a little better in having them a little speed boost and more damage reduction. So, all right. So we got a Kyrian Covenant. We have put our conduits in, and now we're just going to go through the basic rotation of Protection Paladin. So you're starting off, you got to pull. Number one thing, you always want to make sure you're standing in your consecration. So just to give you an example, look here at the so consecrations reduce all damage by 7.2% when we're standing inside it. So we're going to lose that damage reduction if we move outside of our consecration. So and then the big thing on pulls is you want to make sure you get your Avenging Wrath, get your wings up, Divine Toll, bam. You're going to get a ton of Holy Power, Shield of Righteous to spend your Holy Power, and increase your armor, which essentially for us, we normally have an armor of, like, let's say it's 2,500. Shield of Righteous is essentially doubling the armor, reducing our damage reduction, increasing our damage reduction by what was that? Another 25% or so. So very important that you keep Shield of the Righteous up. And you can see here, I use a little weaker R to cast my spells, to track my spells, track my Holy Power, and this bar, I have 3 Holy Power now. I can spend a Shield of Righteous. This bar right here lets me know how many I left. But when you're fighting it over and over and over and over, you can you can just keep stacking it. It does have a limit, I believe. Stacks up to like 12 seconds, I think. So you can keep it up. You don't really have to worry about losing it essentially. But that's basically your open rotation, and then on single target you prioritize single target with a Judgment and then a Hammer of Wrath. Judgment's going to buff your next holy ability. Hammer of Wrath is your highest single target ability. You can use it during wings. However, if you don't have wings up, you can only use it on an enemy that's below 20% health. So it's something to keep in mind with your rotation. And then this is our basic AoE ability, Hammer of the Righteous. This is the ability that could be replaced by Blessed Hammer. So you have the 3 charges instead of the 2, and then Avenger Shield is the interrupt. So sometimes you want to save that because you know you're going to need the interrupts, and then other times, if you know you don't need the interrupts, you just it's going to give you that small shield, as you can see here. It's going to give you the damage, and it's going to generate Holy Power. So. Alright, excuse me. Alright, so talking about the rotation, I think, again, it's a basic rotation. You're coming in, you're popping wings, popping Divine Toll. We're using Shield of the Righteous. We're making sure Consecration's down. We're prioritizing Hammer of Wrath when we can. When we don't have that, we're prioritizing Avenger Shield in an AoE setting and Hammer of Righteous in an AoE setting. If not, we're prioritizing Judgment and Hammer of Wrath in a single target setting. And then that is your rotation right there. So as you can see, if you kind of look at my cooldowns, we get to a point where nothing's really up, right? I got that. Having more haste will like fit that in, but that's what I mean by it's a very simple rotation, and you can focus on your surroundings, mob positioning, dungeon routes, being aware of how your DPS are doing. and stuff like that. And I think it just helps you become a better tank when you can just focus on all the externals instead of it having to like focus on your rotation and do damage and stuff. You pretty much have automatic threat with the Paladin, and it makes it very easy in that respect. So, all right, so that's your damage rotation and getting threat rotation right off the bat. Now, just talk about some of our defensives. You want to use these defensives before you take big incoming damage on like a big hit from a boss, or maybe you're doing a monster pull. You know, you're doing a monster pull. You want to hit Guardian of the Ancient Kings right away. So Ardent Defender reduces the damage you take by 20%. You're going to be able to extend this the more you use Shield of Righteous because of the conduit we used, and then you're going to be able to reduce its cooldown also by using Shield of the Righteous. So it should be up every 45 seconds, 1 minute, essentially. And that's going to reduce our damage by 20%. Use it on every mob. Or if you need to save it for a big hit on a boss or something like that. Guardian of Ancient Kings is huge cooldown, 5 minutes, which ours, because we talented into Righteous Protector, it's going to come down to 2.5 minutes. 50% damage reduction for 8 seconds, used before big damage in tank or a big hit on a boss essentially. Blood Spattered Scale, I can't emphasize this enough. Really try to get this from the other side. Spend your Valor on it right away to get it up to 246, and if you get lucky, you can get the Vault drop. It's basically like another defensive for us. So, and then Divine Shield makes you completely immune. However, you're going to lose all threat. Unless you're talented into Final Reckoning, I believe. Final Stand. However, one way to do it is you can Divine Shield and then Taunt, and Taunt will give you at complete aggro for 3 seconds. Might be 4 seconds. So that's one way to take a big hit, like Mordretha in Theater of Pain in the last boss. She has a monster hit. You can Divine Shield real quick, taunt, and then you got to make sure you cancel Divine Shield before the taunt is over, or she'll run after one of your DPS and kill him, and you'll wipe, and then you won't time the key, which is not good. So one way to do that is you make down here I have a Divine Shield macro. It basically cancels Divine Shield. You can Google that. If I remember, I'll try to put it in the details. So basically, you Divine Shield, you have it, and you hit it again, and it will cancel it, take it off you right away. So you take the hit, get rid of it, don't lose aggro because you're taunting. So that's another one of your defensives, and then other things. So our other main defensive are interrupts, because we can interrupt more. Technically, we shouldn't be taking as much damage, right? Well, yes, but our other main defensive is using our Word of Glory. So it costs 3 Holy Power, so you can't Shield of the Righteous if you're using Word of Glory, but it's a heal. So we take damage and we heal it up on ourselves. Every 5 Shield of the Righteousness, we get a free one, which, let me show you that real quick. So right here I have my Shield of the I have my counter. So we're at 4 now, so I know, like, if I'm fighting, we're at 4. I know if I use one more Shield of Righteous, I'm going to get a free one, so free. It does a lot extra heal when it's free. There you go. And that's a defensive part of our toolkit. And the great part of that, the flexibility of that, which a lot of other tanks don't have access to, is we can use that on our party members. So if we're in there and we're doing fine, but our mage or our hunter or any one of our DPS steps on the wrong thing or gets hit by a swirly when they shouldn't have, and their health goes down to 25%, we hit them with a free Word of Glory, 100%, good to go, save the pull, save the boss. It's one of the great toolkit flexibility of the Protection Paladin. And on top of that, you have this Word of Glory, which essentially will heal all DPS and your healers to full. We also have Lay on Hands, which will heal all of them to full, and it will heal yourself to full. So you can think of Lay on Hands, monster cooldown, but it will save you from death. 1%, if 0, you're dead. 1% to 100%, which is a huge deal and can save a key. And I find myself you're going to use it a lot more on your teammates when they just make a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. It's going to happen. You can hit them with the lay on hands, and it's going to save the key. So, and then our Blessing and Protection is it makes anyone immune to physical damage for 10 seconds. If you put it on yourself, you're going to lose aggro from mobs that only do physical damage. But it's great, and put it on your teammates. There's some mobs that are just random. The first boss of Necrotic Wake, he summons these random mobs, and if they hit your DPS if they bite your DPS 3 times, they're dead. So you see a DPS out of position, he's getting bit by the mob, you Blessing and Protection him, he's completely safe, you can kill the mobs before and then refocus on the boss. Or, same thing, Necrotic Wake, when you're up fighting Stitch Flesh right before, there's some mobs and him himself, he does Morbid Fixation where he will fixate on a DPS or healer. If you Blessing and Protection them, they're completely safe. They're immune to physical damage during the Morbid Fixation. They can stay and do their DPS. So something to think about. It takes some skill to use and it takes some practice. So in the beginning, don't worry if you're having issues putting it on people, if you put it on the wrong person. That happens to me sometimes when there's like 2 druids in the group. I'll bop the wrong one at the wrong time, something like that. So another one of our utility toolkit, essentially. So we talked about the stun earlier, Hammer of Justice, which if you're talented into it, will bring it down to a 30-second cooldown, which, awesome. 30-second stun in addition to your 15-second stun plus your, 15-second interrupt plus your 13-second interrupt plus your 40-second AoE interrupt, your Covenant interrupts. Pugs, that's why I say Protection Paladin is great in Pugs, because you can heal your teammates and you can interrupt for your teammates and you're very self-sufficient, which is awesome. And so Blessing to Sacrifice is something you put on your teammates. You reduce their damage by 30% and it brings the damage to you. Awesome, right? So on big AoE events, throw a Blessing to Sacrifice on your healer, and overall the healer will now have to heal less damage total, essentially. So and you're protecting them. So something to do. Another amazing utility for Protection Paladins, Blessing of Freedom. Blesses a party or raid member, granting immunity to movement impairing effects. So if you're rooted, you're slowed, you pop that on them, and they can move around. If there's some movement impairing effects in dungeons that do damage, for instance, in Sanguine Depths, the Grand Overseers apply chains. You can line of sight those chains, but sometimes you're going to be running with some DPS that just stands there and takes damage. Well, you can notice it. You can Blessing of Freedom, removes the damage, lets them move around again. Huge benefit if you can use it right in a lot of areas. Removes slows, which is awesome. So Flash of Light is your heal. You're not going to be healing that much, but in a tight spot, you might need to heal some of your teammates or yourself. And then another really good ability, especially in Plaguefall, Cleanse Toxins. So you can remove disease and toxins. Only on one person at a time, 8-second cooldown. But in Plaguefall, in the last boss, Infectious Rain, there's a lot of poison mobs in there. It's just going to really help your healer out and your team out when you can remove poisons that have been applied. Theater of Pain in the Gore Chop Wing, if any of the Withering Disease casts go off, again, you can remove those poisons, and it's, again, you're helping the team out, essentially. So, all right. So those are the main abilities for Protection Paladin. You can also res if your Arcane Torrent is for Blood Elves. I like to use the Engineering Battle Res, highly recommends. But so you basically have offensive abilities, you gather and threat, you have your defensive where you're reacting abilities, and then you have great utility for the party. And it's just you just work them all together and you tank the crap out of a Mythic Plus. So one more thing I did want to talk about before we end the video today is add-ons. And because the Protection Paladin has so much utility, I highly recommend an add-on like Voodoo. Sorry, trying to get it. Oh, so I'm in combat. Yeah, combat.
Shall we converse?
Okay. So the reason I do this is I keep a for the panels, right here, panel 1 um, will show my party essentially, and then I can click on people, and so I assign spells. So like cleanse toxins. All I need to do is we're in the heat of the battle. Instead of like selecting them and hitting the ability, I can just move my mouse over, left click, cleanse toxins, done. I put Blessing of Sacrifice on there. Obviously, I can't Blessing of Sacrifice myself, but I can Blessing of Freedom myself. You can see now I have the Blessing of Freedom debuff. All I had to do was my middle mouse click. And then I apply Shift for Blessing of Protection. You can see it here. My Lay on Hands is my Shift right click. And then if Word of Glory, if I need to heal someone else besides myself, is Shift middle click. And then Quick Heal is Alt left click for me. So those abilities allow me to use this Voodoo allows me to use the utility abilities on the fly without affecting how I can tank and hold threat and aggro and keep my basic DPS rotation going. So highly recommend something like that. Maybe don't start off with it right away, but once you get comfortable using those utility for the Paladin, it makes life so much easier to just quick clicks than have to try to manage something on the keyboard. And you can keep your tanking up, you can keep your DPS up, keep your threat up without going into some issues. Some other great Mythic Plus add-ons, weak auras, are basically what you see down here. It's how I track my holy power and my cooldowns. A lot of times, sometimes when I run, I'll just get rid of these bars because it's a distraction. Put my health here. In dungeons, it gives you a help with the miss maze and stuff. There's a ton of information out there on it. For my Paladin, I just use a basic one, Athanar UI. If you Google Paladin weak auras, it's like the top one. Super basic. It does ret, holy, and protection all in one package. So good to go there. And then highly recommend #1 Mythic Dungeon Tool for a tank. Well, it is Mythic Dungeon Tools, MDT. This is how you do your route planning. In Mythic Plus, there is 2 things you and your team need to do. 1, defeat all the bosses. 2, you need to get 100% trash count. And you do those 2 things before the timer runs out and you time the dungeon. If you don't, you miss the timer, your key will go down 1. People will be sad, you won't increase your IO score, right? So this lets you plan what pulls you're going to do. First pull, in halls, we come in, we're going to lust this big pull right here to the left. Then we're going to go do this, then we're going to go over to the right and do the second shard. And it lets you plan skips. It lets you plan all your routes and your bosses. It's going to give you information about the mobs. And most importantly, it has how much percent the mobs are worth, essentially. So like this pack right here is worth, this first pull is worth 8.1%. So you do all those pulls, you get a minimum of 100%, you time the key. And the main thing is you don't want to pull extra packs. It's just wasting time in Mythic Plus. And it's just super fun to plan your routes. So grab this, have fun planning your routes. There's a lot of resources online that'll get you started on the basics of route planning. If you go to rio.gg, I think they have some weekly routes that they recommend. That's another good add-on to download, RIO. It gives everyone like a score. You can see down in the right-hand corner my Raider score is 2169. Gives you some information on how many 15s they time. So if you're going to invite them to a group, you can get a little background information on them before you invite them. So yeah. So those are the add-ons I recommend. I think those are the essentials I would recommend for Protection Paladin. And then before we close up the video here, I think I just want to make a couple more comments on group composition in Mythic Plus. So if you're like me, I started out in 9.0 basically running pugs, right? So you come here, you go to pre-made groups, you go dungeons, find a group. You have all your groups, right? You apply to them. For a tank, it's a lot easier to get into a group. especially if you have a decent IO score and you compete with other people to get in the groups. But if you don't have any friends and you're just starting, that's where you got to start. But if I think the best way to build a Mythic Plus community for yourself is, first, if you can find a guild that does Mythic Plus, or at least a couple people in a guild that do Mythic Plus, go for it. I found a guild on the forums. I was just looking for a social guild. Found a guild that did Mythic Plus and raiding. Got a couple people that did Mythic Plus, but not as many, so I had to pug a lot in 9.0. But you're pugging, and you find an amazing healer, or you find some amazing DPS. You say some nice comments to them. Add them to your friends list. Then in a couple weeks, you have 20 good DPS and 5 great healers on your friends list, and you don't have to pug anymore. And they all have level 20 keys, and you're all pushing together, and it just creates an awesome environment. You can create a nice social network of friends, and I mean, basically that's what I did. In 9.0 I pugged, and now in 9.1 I rarely pug because I have friends or just acquaintances. I know they're going to do good DPS, and I know they're going to heal well, and I've ran with them before. And it's just something I highly recommend. When you're pugging, if you find someone good, add them to your friends list, send them a nice message so they remember you. And I think it's just going to improve your quality of life playing this game. I think this game is just really enjoyed in a social environment. If you can play with some friends. Especially Mythic Plus, you're all working together to beat that timer, right? It's so much fun. So, aside from that, just looking at like general team comp, you most all the time want a team with Lust, which means you either need to have a Shaman healer, Shaman DPS, a mage, or a hunter. Lust is extremely important for tyrannical weeks. On non-tyrannical weeks, you can get away with drums. We'll get you 15% haste buff, but Lust is going to give you a 30% haste buff, which is just more DPS, especially important tyrannical weeks with really hard bosses. So I think you're looking for one of those in your comp. And then as far as healers go, I think any healer is viable. As far as DPS go, any DPS is viable for the keys that I'm doing up to 20. I think moving higher than that, you maybe want to optimize your keys and your maybe your group's a little better if you find through friends your raid group and stuff. And then and I think and the last thing I want to reiterate with the thing is when you're playing, you find a good healer, add them to your list. And then I think the way, as far as DPS go, you got great DPS, good DPS, and ones you don't want, right? So the ones you don't want aren't using their utility, they're not using their defensives, and they are not doing good damage. Good DPS are doing awesome damage, but they take a lot of damage, and they're not using their defensives to help the healer out, and then they're not using their utility. Like if a Frost Mage, isn't slowing things down for you, if a Hunter's not using their traps, or if you got a Windwalker Monk who's just pumping damage, but there was a couple times he could have used a Ring of Peace and he didn't use any utility. That's where the great DPS come in. They're doing awesome damage and they're using the full kit of their character, and highly recommend getting them on your friends list if you find them in a pug. So the idea is, you pug, you get through the dungeons, you're climbing up, you get a team of people, and then you don't have to pug anymore. It makes life easier. So, so I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Protection Paladin 9.1.5. I think it's a great spec. It's got damage, it's got defensives, it's got amazing team utility. You can make up for a lot of issues if people step the wrong way or anything in a dungeon. And I mean, it's just like you're the tanky healer class. So like for me, I always played that in like Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid and stuff. So it fulfills that fantasy or whatever. So in the future, I'm going to make videos on how I play Protection Paladin through each dungeon, the pulls I do, when I use defensives, cooldowns, and how I would change talents for each dungeons, and certain affix weeks for those dungeons. But this is my first video ever, so I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great day. Thanks.